Thank you so much, Randy, for the introduction and also the incredible amount of work that you've put into this session along with the rest of our Team AOC staff. Hello, everyone. I hope everybody is, doing well and hanging in there in the midst of this pandemic. As we know, coronavirus is not just an enormous public health crisis, but it's also created an enormous economic crisis for so many of our families, whether it's our frontline workers, our working families, or our small businesses. This is where our impact is being felt the absolute most. Now, on the small business front, as many of you know, one of my issues with the most recent CARES Act is that it did not do nearly enough for our small businesses in addition to our working families, but it did establish and do two very important things. It dramatically expanded the EIDL program, the the economic impact disaster loan program from the SBA, and it also created a new program called the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program. And both of these programs are very critical for helping small businesses get through this time. I'm going to talk tonight about what these programs actually are, how they are different, and how you can access them ideally as quickly as possible. And so that's really what tonight is all about. Once again, there is live interpretation. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a todas personas que están con nosotros hoy. Gracias por venir, y si necesitas ayuda con interpretación, traducción, hay un botón aquí que dice interpretation, I'm trying, y'all, traducción, y si oprima aquí puede ver y experience, sorry guys, it's been a long day. Puede ver esta presentación en español. So that being said, thank you all so much. And let's just hop right to it. Let's get right into it. I'm going to share my screen here, and let's talk through how you can access and what small business support looks like for the PPP and EIDL programs. So the first thing that you can do is access the Small Business Administration, the New York District Office. This is just some quick contact information. You can screenshot this, you can Google it, but these are the phone numbers for the New York District Office, and this is also the information for the House Small Business Committee. The House Small Business Committee, in case you don't know, is chaired by our very own Nidia Velazquez. She represents Queens and Brooklyn, and she did such an incredible job fighting as hard as she possibly can to make sure that these programs even existed for small businesses. It was an upward fight, but we were able to get that done, and a lot of that had to do with her leadership. Now, the disaster loan customer service line is right here at 800-659-2966, and that has 24/7 support in both English and Spanish. Now, in terms of the SBA and the Small Business Administration, basically the programs that are available now are the EIDL programs, the Paycheck Protection Programs. Those are the two biggest ones that I'm going to be talking to you all tonight about. And then there's the SBA Express Bridge Loans and SBA Debt Relief. Now, let's start with the EIDL. I will launch off by saying basically we have the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, and the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loans and Grants Program. Now, when you hear, oh, the federal government is issuing loans that will be 100% forgivable if you use those loans on expenses like payroll, and those forgivable loans are through the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program. Now, for other folks who've been saying, I've been hearing about this $10,000 grant that are available to small businesses, that is through the EIDL Disaster Loan and Grant Program. EIDL loans are non-forgivable. They will not be forgiven, but those payments will be deferred, and interest will be deferred all payments will be deferred for 6 months. So if you need a loan for your business, for certain expenses, which I will get into, you can use the EIDL, and you can get a $10,000 grant with some asterisks, but you can get a $10,000 grant with the EIDL. So I'm going to hop into that first, and then I'll hop into the payroll protection program. So with the EIDL, what we're going to cover: what is it, who is eligible, how do I apply, and how do I spend the loan and grant money. So what is the EIDL? Now, for the EIDL and the PPP, it covers sole proprietors in addition to many other businesses. Now, for those of you who may hear, oh, you know, I wanted to apply to the SBA before now, and I wasn't eligible, this program isn't for me. A lot of these SBA programs have been expanded due to coronavirus. So make sure that you recheck who and what businesses are eligible for these new and expanded emergency programs, because we are seeking to cover more businesses than are traditionally covered by your kind of normal SBA programs. So this includes sole proprietors, individual contractors, agricultural cooperatives, non-for-profits. All of these folks are eligible. Now, EIDL loans can be used for fixed debts, payroll benefits, and costs due to coronavirus. It is up to a $2 million loan with an interest rate of 2.75 if you are a 501c3, a nonprofit, or 3.75 if you are a for-profit. There is currently a 1-year deferral on all payments for the EIDL. So if your business needs a loan, you do not have to begin payments on that loan for 12 months, for a full year. It also includes an emergency grant of $10,000, and it is administered directly by and through the Small Business Association. So for those of you who usually apply for SBA loans through a bank, the EIDL does not operate that way. The PPP does. The Payroll Protection Program does operate through banks, but the EIDL program, you can go straight to the Small Business Administration website and apply directly through their portal. Now, here's one big question. Is it a loan or a grant? I've been hearing both things lately. So it's both. Within 3 days of applying for your EIDL, your disaster loan, you should receive an advance of up to $10,000 that does not require repayment. So if you apply for your loan, you apply for the loan and you get $10,000 free. So it is both a loan and a grant. Now, it gets a little tricky if you also want to apply for PPP, but I'll get into that. But if you're just applying for an EIDL loan, you will get a $10,000 grant, and that kind of is part of the actual loan process. If you apply for the loan and get denied, you still keep that $10,000 grant. It is yours, it is free, you do not have to pay it back. Eligible entities can receive up to $2 million in a disaster loan. But remember that this is a loan with interest, and only up to the first $10,000 does that not require repayment. So the balance of the entire loan cannot be forgiven, just that first 10K. And again, that's only if you're applying for the disaster loan. Now, who is eligible for an EIDL loan? Two main buckets, I'd say. One is any individual operating as an independent contractor or under a sole proprietorship with or without employees. So if you are self-employed as an independent contractor or a sole proprietor, you are covered by the EIDL, and you are also covered by the PPP. Also, any businesses, private nonprofits, cooperatives, employee stock ownership plans, or tribal small businesses with less than 500 employees, all of these entities are available and eligible for an economic injury disaster loan. Now, how do you apply for it? The EIDL program is directly administered by the SBA. You do not have to go through a bank, so you must apply directly through the SBA. You can submit those applications by visiting the website, sorry about that, guys. Okay, now, so here we've got our slide coming up. Okay, great. So how do you apply? Of course, it like suspends right when I say how do you get to the good part? How do you apply? So how do you apply? Once again, you do not apply for the EIDL through a bank. Again, these are two separate programs. You have the disaster loan program, non-forgivable loans, except it does come with a $10,000 grant. And then you have the payroll protection program, which does have forgivable loans. So through the EIDL, the disaster loan program, you do that directly through the SBA. So you can just go right here through this portal and you have the COVID-19 relief.sba.gov. So this right here is where you apply for the disaster loan directly through the SBA. Again, you do not have to go through a bank. Now, this application, if you have seen it before, it has been streamlined. So it's got all of the review and all of your applicant data right here. It is designed to get cash into your hands and into your small business as quickly as possible. So you just fill this all right out here, and within 3 days, at bare minimum, you should receive a $10,000 grant, and you will get a decision based on your credit score. If you are declined for your loan, that $10,000 grant is still yours. You do not have to pay it back. So if I am unfamiliar with the EIDL process, can anyone help me apply? Yes, we have several SBA, Small Business Association, or rather Small Business Administration resource partners in our district. You can get help from Lehman College, LaGuardia Community College, Queens College, Queens York, Queens Business Outreach Center, and Columbia University SDBC or SBDC. All of these folks, or most of these offices, are working remotely, so you can just call them up and they can walk you through the EIDL process. But again, that website is designed, it's almost like a quiz. It just asks you about your business and you can apply. Now, if you receive the emergency grant, what can you use the funds for? Now, this is another important distinction between the PPP and the EIDL. Now, you can use the EIDL to provide paid sick leave to your employees, payroll to retain employees, mortgage or rent obligations that cannot be met due to revenue loss, and purchasing materials that are now more expensive due to COVID-19. Now, with the PPP, you can use these first two loans. The forgivable loans are used here and also for some aspects of mortgage or rent payments. With the payroll protection program, you can use proceeds of that loan, or you can use portions of that loan to pay mortgage interest and certain rent payments. But if you need help paying your mortgage, you would use the EIDL, I believe. Now, one thing that I should do and that I want to pause is to say that a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, I hear this thing from one person, I hear this thing from another person, which one is the right thing? The reason you may be hearing one thing from your bank, another thing from somebody else, is because the SBA is currently rolling out guidance. So what Congress has done is that we have told the Small Business Administration what to do. The SBA is now developing guidance in how to do it. So if you're hearing that things are done one way or another in another day, know that some of that may have to do with the Small Business Administration, but the information that you are getting from me tonight is what is covered by the law. It's the what in the bill, and it's also up to the latest SBA guidance that our office has been monitoring. So what you are receiving tonight is the latest information based on SBA guidance and the actual law that's been passed. If you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to contact either my office or the Small Business Administration, the House Committee for Small Business, to answer any of those questions. Anyways, back to it. The EIDL can be used for all of these. Now, the PPP program, this is something that the EIDL can cover that the Payroll Protection Program does not, which is purchasing materials that are now more expensive due to COVID-19. So for example, if you want to offer PPE to your workers, if you're trying to offer face masks, and those face masks are now much more expensive due to the crisis, you can use your emergency grant. You can use that free $10,000 to purchase materials that are now more expensive, those face masks that are more expensive. Or, you know, there are so many different small businesses. You may have, according to your kind of industry, some materials may simply be more expensive now due to coronavirus, due to runs on inventory. You can use the EIDL grant for this. That's that free $10,000. You can use it for this. Now that we got that out of the way, I know what many of you have questions about is the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program. These are the 100% forgivable loans that are eligible to your business. Now let's dive into this because I know that you all have a lot of questions about that. I wanted to get the EIDL out of the way. So we're going to cover what is the PPP, how long does it last, who's eligible, when should I apply, now, how can I spend my PPP, and how can I defer payments or earn forgiveness. So we'll go through all of that. So quick overview, what is the Paycheck Protection Program or Payroll Protection Program? Congress has allocated a total of $350 billion for PPP. This program is first come, first serve, which is why I'm encouraging everybody who has the ability to please apply like yesterday. I know some of these big banks are being a pain in the butt. We are getting on them. We are making sure that they are able to process these loans as soon as possible. And I'll get into that later tonight. But really, this program is first come, first serve. That is why I am hosting this tonight, because a lot of these big venture capital funds and these kind of fancy incubators and people with access to not just already have access to a lot of money, but also have access to a lot of special networks, have been getting these kind of tailored briefs. And what that means is that these Silicon Valley companies and these startups and these with crazy investors, they have access and they're being told to apply for this right now, whereas a lot of our small businesses in our communities are kind of left onto their own. So that is why I'm doing this tonight, because I want you to apply for this as soon as possible. Businesses can receive up to 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost, up to $10 million. So 2.5 times your average monthly payroll is what you are eligible to receive through the PPP. 100% forgivable if you spend it on, you know, in the right ways, which I'll get into. But again, this is up to $10 million. 100% of this loan can be forgiven. Again, you got to spend it the right way, and I'm going to show you how. And though the Paycheck Protection Program is run by the federal government, you apply through a bank. Again, a very important difference. The EIDL is directly through the SBA. This program is, you have to apply through a bank. And I'll get into that because I know some of you all are having difficulties there. Now, the Paycheck Protection Program, who's eligible, a lot of the similar folks, you know, sole proprietors, contractors, 501c3s, veterans organizations, tribal businesses with less than 500 employees, you are eligible for these 100% forgivable loans. It can be used for fixed debts, payroll, benefits, mortgage, rent, and utilities. And again, this is up to a $10 million loan or 2.5 times the average payroll cost per month. Unlike the EIDL, which is a 1-year deferral, the Paycheck Protection Program is a 6-month deferral. But that should be okay for you because, again, it's designed to be forgivable for 2.5 times your payroll. So if you're spending it in the right way, you should be exhausting these funds in less than 6 months and have it be 100% forgivable. Now, there are specific standards for grants and loan forgiveness, and the SBA is administered by approved financial institutions. So these are done through banks. So how long does this program last? Now, the SBA has committed to authorize these 349 billion, sorry, it says million, it's billion in loans for the period beginning on February 15th, 2020. So that means these are backdated. So you can use these loans for payroll that you already made, and it's ending on June 30th, 2020. Now, even though this program ends on June 30th, 2020, my take on this is that it's June 30th or whenever these funds are exhausted, whichever comes first. And I do believe that there's a high possibility that these funds could be exhausted from CARES 2 before June 30th. That's why I think you need to apply as soon as possible. The good news is that we are hearing support in the next emergency package for the PPP program, this program to be extended to more businesses and to be further funded. But that has not happened yet. So right now I'm telling everyone to just assume, as you all know, as small business owners and cooperative owners and nonprofits, the deal isn't done until the ink is dry. And right now the ink is dry on $350 billion that lasts through June 30th. So we need to make sure that we get on it. You know, there's prospects and it's looking good for this program to be extended, but it has not yet happened. So again, apply as soon as possible. You can pull it up. I'll show you the website and you can just do it tonight. Now, what about franchises and hotels? Small businesses in the hospitality and food industry with more than one location could also be eligible. They are limited to the same maximum employee size, 500 per location, and loan size, 10 million total. So how are payroll costs defined? Because you have to spend this on payroll costs. So this is the sum of any payments of any type of compensation for employees. That includes paid time off. That includes up to $100,000 a year to contractors. That includes meeting cash tips or equivalent, healthcare benefits and premiums, FMLA, dismissal allowance, severance, and retirement benefits, and of course, salary, wages, or commission. Sorry, I'm just pulling up a note here. So yeah, and so I'm just gonna, I'm being asked by our Spanish interpreter to slow down a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm barreling through this, but I'll try to go a little bit more slowly for you all as well, because this is a lot of information to take in. So essentially, the payroll costs, if you are spending money to compensate your workers in any way, that counts as a payroll cost. So that includes benefits, that includes healthcare benefits, salary, wages, commission, paid leave, etc. But these are the covered benefits for your payroll costs. Now, who is eligible for a PPP loan? So all businesses that are economically affected by COVID-19 include nonprofits. So I want to be extra sure on this faith-based organizations. So this is tricky because actually I just want to clarify on this point, because it's not, because our churches right now are very much hurting, and the guidance from the SBA on the PPP loans is getting a little tricky. One thing that we do know is that if you run a house of faith and you have an affiliated church shop, or if you have a store in your temple, gift shops, etc., in your house of faith, that aspect of it, depending on how it's incorporated, can be eligible for a PPP. But there are a lot of carve-outs that exclude houses of worship, and that is something that we are also working on in the next relief package, because we know that so many of our local churches, our local mosques, synagogues, etc., still have to pay mortgage and rent in this time. And without tithing, it's becoming very difficult. So that's just an aside. Veterans organizations are also covered, tribal businesses, sole proprietorships, and self-employed individuals, including independent contractors. If you have less than 500 employees, you can apply. Independent contractors do not count as employees for purposes of calculating your payroll. So independent contractors have the ability to apply for a PPP loan on their own. This means that if you are an employer calculating payroll for the PPP loan application, you should not include costs to your independent contractors. So what does that mean? That means if I'm a small business and I employ an independent contractor, or I use an independent contractor, that does not count towards my payroll. But if I am an independent contractor, then you can apply for PPP on your own as your payroll. So I'm sorry if this slide is a little confusing, but basically what that means, if you're an independent contractor, you apply on your own for PPP, cover that. But if you are a small business that pays an independent contractor, that does not count as payroll. That counts as a separate business expense, just like you normally count it. Now, so how do we determine the loan amount? Again, it is your payroll times 2.5. So if your average monthly payroll is $10,000 in your benefits, paid time off, salary, wages, etc., if that amounts to $10,000, you will multiply that by 2.5, and your loan, your projected eligibility for your loan will be $250,000 for payroll. So where can you apply? Applications for the PPP opened last Friday, April 3rd, for small businesses and sole proprietorships. Now it opens this Friday, April 10th, for independent contractors and the self-employed. So those are two separate dates. If you are a small business and sole proprietor, you could have started, you can apply right now. It opened last Friday. If you're an independent contractor and you're self-employed, you can apply this Friday, but you can fill out your loan information now. The loan paperwork is available so that you can start that now if you're an independent contractor and just walk up on Friday to help people out. To go there. So as I mentioned, the paper form, it's just 2 pages. This program is designed to try to cut through a lot of the former red tape that the SBA had. So it's 2 pages. You just fill this out and take it to your lender. Can I go to any bank to apply to the Paycheck Protection Program? So you will need to check with your local community or commercial bank, or ask your bank or loan officer who deals with SBA 7A loans and the PPP program. But one thing that I will quickly say is that you can pull up this website right now. Let's do it together. So pull up sba.gov/paycheck protection/find. You can pull that up right now, and what you will see is this website from the SBA. And you could say, how do I know what banks around me are offering this program? And so what you can do is essentially type in a zip code, or you can just zoom in. You can just zoom in and find where you are on the map. So let's see here, we're in the Bronx. My neighborhood is right around here. Sorry about that. So we're pulling this up. And let's see, this is New York 14. So New York 14 is right around here. It's these general areas. And so if we want, we can just hit search. Oh, whoops. I'll just type in the zip code for it. Hit 10462, here we go. And you can see all of the banks that are in this specific neighborhood. And so you can look that up right here. So what we see here is the banks in the Parkchester neighborhood offering SBA loans are HSBC, Citibank, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Santander. So let's say you click on the Santander, you can get the phone number for the bank right there, pull it up, and you can give them a call, or perhaps you can look up the specific branch phone number. Now, that is how you find which areas are eligible to you in the PPP. So that's how you find out which banks in your neighborhood are participating in the PPP program. Again, try to call them in advance. When we talk about inequity baked into this program, one of the inequities that we know is that a lot of banks do not have the per capita density branch to community size density in our communities that they have in other communities. So on average, banks tend to have fewer branches in lower income Black and Brown communities than they do in communities like Manhattan. And in a time like this, these branches tend to be closed. So again, it's so important that you call your branch and see what they can do for you in administering PPP loans. So I'll go back to the presentation, but that's how you find your PPP loan. So what can you use these forgivable loans for? And this is so important, because if you do not spend your PPP loan correctly, if you do not cover eligible expenses, then it is not forgivable and you will be on the hook for paying it back. So what can you use the PPP loan for? One is continuation of healthcare benefits, insurance premiums, and paid sick and family leave. The other is employee salaries, commissions, and similar compensations. Mortgage interest, not your principal, I believe, but mortgage interest payments, and rent, including lease agreements and utility bills. So your rent is fully covered under a PPP, mortgage interest is fully covered under a PPP, and your utility bills, your gas, your lights, heat, etc. And interest on any other debt that you have had from before February 15th. So basically, any interest at all in relation to your business is also eligible under the PPP. So can you defer your PPP loan payments? Yes, they are automatically deferred for 6 months following the date that you receive the loan. So once you receive your loan, you have 6 months of fully deferred payments. And again, hopefully this is designed so that you spend this in a shorter period than that. So make sure that you have to make those payments for 6 months. However, interest will continue to accrue on PPP loans during this deferment, and the interest is forgivable as well. But again, you have to make sure that you spend it in the right place. If you spend it on inventory, for example, that is not covered, and you will be on the hook for both the loan and the interest. So is there an interest rate on the PPP loan? Yes, it is a loan with interest, but again, during the covered period, it shall bear an interest rate of no more than 4%. It is currently at 1%. There is no required payment, and all accrued interest is eligible for forgiveness. Just spend it the right way, as we mentioned. Can the PPP loan be forgiven in whole or in part? Yes, again, the entire amount of loan forgiveness can be up to the full principal. They are eligible for those forgiveness, but you have to pay it out within that 6 months. You have to spend it. So this is designed for you to get it and to spend it as much as possible. The amount of loan forgiveness can be reduced if you use any of the loan proceeds for something other than the forgivable purposes, and if during the covered period. Now, this is the important part. So you will get knocked off certain forgiveness. You will be knocked off forgiveness if you use the loan for something other than the purposes we had just covered. But also, you apply for this loan using your payroll costs, right? So you apply for this loan saying what your payroll costs are. So the federal government is lending you and giving you this forgiveness for you to maintain that payroll. If you reduce your payroll, if the total number of full-time employees is less than what was in your application, and the compensation levels for any of those employees is also less, you will be knocked off of forgiveness. So what that means is that you cannot apply and say, apply on your old payroll and then pay out, reduce those costs, and either cut people's salaries or fire people and not bring them back. You cannot do that. Otherwise, you will be knocked off of forgiveness as well. There are some exemptions. For example, if you're applying with old payroll, you had an employee leave, you tried to hire them back, and they moved, they went to take care of someone full time. There are exemptions for some of those contingencies. Again, I would talk to your lender about what those are, but overall, you can't apply with a certain payroll cost and then try to cut people's wages and salaries after the fact to try to pocket that difference. It doesn't work like that, and you will be on the hook. So make sure that you are spending 100% of this loan on payroll expenses. So determining the loan forgiveness amount. So if your actual 8-week payroll expense is $200,000, your mortgage interest expense is $0, you spend 10 grand on rent and 5 grand on utilities, all of it is eligible for forgiveness. So basically, this person, this is an example of someone who spent it the right way. They got a $215,000 loan. They spent it on payroll. They spent it on rent. They spent it on utilities. Then all of it was eligible for forgiveness. So again, this essentially turns into free money. It turns into a grant so long as you spend it in the right way. So how do you apply for the PPP loan forgiveness? So the SBA is going to roll out that additional guidance when that forgiveness time rolls out. So keep your eyes peeled. But again, just make sure that you save every receipt, make sure that you save every invoice, and make sure that that PPP loan is being spent on the qualified expenses. If you save that, then you should be good. So to recap, how much of your PPP loan will you have to pay back? I'm sorry if I'm saying this 10,000 times over, but you do not have to pay back your PPP loan if you spend it on payroll, rent, and utilities. If you spend it on eligible expenses, you do not have to pay this back. This is free money for you and your business if you spend it the right way. So again, it'll be fully forgiven. Employers who keep or quickly rehire employees that they may have just had to let go and maintain those salary levels, the loan is forgiven. So again, this is the key part. For employers who keep or quickly rehire their employees and maintain salary levels, the loan will be forgiven. So you have to keep or rehire your employees and keep their salaries the way that they were, and it'll be completely forgiven. So decisions on forgiveness will be made within 60 days of the submission, and loan payments will be deferred for 6 months. So let's dive into some frequently asked questions, which is, I'll just pop through some of those, and then I'll get in through some of the live chat questions as well. So can I get an EIDL loan and a PPP loan? The answer is yes, but it gets a little tricky. So yes, you can get both loans, but the key is to use the money to cover different expenses. So if you get your PPP loan and it covers 100% of your payroll, and it covers 100% of your payroll expenses, then your EIDL loan obviously can't be used to cover payroll, right? Because your PPP loan is designed to cover payroll. So perhaps your EIDL loan will be used to cover your rent or your mortgage, or perhaps it'll be used to cover additional benefits that were not covered by the PPP. Now, here is the tricky part. the CARES Act says if you receive the $10,000 EIDL emergency grant, so like let's say you apply for the disaster loan and you get that $10,000 grant, and then you apply for the PPP, then basically those overlap. It doesn't, it's not an additional. I want it to be an additional. I fought for it to be an additional, but unfortunately, you cannot apply for the EIDL and the PPP and hope that you get that bonus 10K. It doesn't work like that. Basically, it'll overlap, and the $10,000 will almost be considered as a payment to your PPP loan. So don't get messed up by this. If you do not do the accounting on this right, you could be in the hole for 10 grand. So make sure that you're doing this correctly, because if you get that $10,000 grant, basically they're going to knock $10,000 off of your PPP forgiveness, because they're going to say you need to use that grant to pay for the PPP. I don't like it. It's confusing. It's red tape. But that is how it is written. And I don't want people that are on this thinking I'll apply for both and I'll pocket the 10,000. It doesn't work like that. If you're applying for the disaster loan alone, if you're just applying for the disaster loan, that $10,000 is free money. If you apply for the disaster loan and the PPP, you're going to be on the hook for that 10K, and the PPP is going to cover it. So basically the PPP will pay for that 10K, or the 10K pays for the PPP. So what is not included in payroll costs? What is not included? Do not spend your PPP money on compensation above $100,000 as prorated for the covered period. So if you pay someone a salary higher than $100,000, PPP will not cover the excess amount. So that is a very important thing. This is covering salaries up to $100,000. Beyond that, and again, it's prorated. So beyond that will not be covered. Taxes imposed or withheld under chapters 21, 22, or 24 of the IRS code. Any compensation of an employee whose principal place of residence is outside of the United States. So if you have an employee and they are not a resident and they do not reside in the United States, you cannot use PPP on their payroll. So that includes remote and foreign workers. Qualified sick leave and family wages for which a credit is allowed under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So you cannot use the PPP for those specific qualified sick leave and family leave wages for the tax credit under the Families First, because basically the way that Families First works is that if you pay qualified sick leave, and again, many of you have accountants and lawyers, so this is something to confer with. They're basically in that first coronavirus package, they passed partial sick leave for the federal government in the form of a tax credit. So you're going to get all that money back when you're going to get your qualified sick leave and family leave back in 2020. And so since you're going to get that back then, you can't use this free money for that as well. It overlaps. Again, talk to your accountant or your lawyer on what those qualified expenses are, because the PPP program can be used for certain sick and family leave expenses. It just can't be used for those covered in that first package. So again, you can either talk to your own accountant or lawyer if you have one. If you don't, I strongly encourage you to talk to your lender when you have this conversation with your lender, and they may be able to point you in the right direction or give you some insight. So are there any application fees, collateral, or personal guarantees required for the EIDL? For both loans, there are no application or other fees. For the PPP, there is no collateral or personal guarantee required. For the disaster loan, collateral is required for loans above $25,000, and personal guarantees are required for loans above $200,000. The typical requirement that a small business be unable to obtain credit elsewhere before receiving a loan does not apply to the PPP. So the SBA usually says, we're here to give you a loan if you're unable to obtain this loan anywhere else, and you have to show that. For the PPP, that does not apply. So you can just go straight for the application and to straight apply for it. What should sole proprietors know? Well, to be eligible, you know, you can seek a PPP loan. You can include those payroll tax filings. So because you may not, if you're an individual, if you're an independent contractor, you may not have like traditional payroll expenses that are exhibited in the normal way. You can use your payroll tax filings as you reported them to the IRS. And again, it's capped at $100,000. You cannot go beyond that. If you've already laid off some of your staff, in order to get full loan forgiveness, you have to try to hire them back. You are able to lay off staff while you have the SBA loan, but the forgiveness will be reduced. So according to the SBA, small businesses have until June 30th to restore your full-time employment. So you have until June of this year to restore your full-time employment. Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, there are some provisions in case a person cannot rehire. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. And the PPP specifically wants you to rehire your full-time employees to kind of give you more leeway in how tough it is.
Yes.
Congresswoman, I'm noticing the time here. We're almost out of time. It's very exciting, and I want to get to some audience questions.
Sure.
We'll definitely have this PowerPoint up soon.
Absolutely.
We're getting one continuous comment of folks that are actually going out there applying for EIDL, applying for the emergency grant. The bill says, the legislation says you should get at least up to $10,000 within 3 days, but folks aren't even hearing back. They're not getting any word. It might have been 3 days for folks who applied on Friday and they haven't received anything. What say you?
Well, it should be, first of all, I would say it's 3 business days. So if you applied on Friday and you haven't heard back, I would hang on till Wednesday or Thursday to hear back because the SBA may not have been processing on Saturday and Sunday. So I would just hang on tight till Wednesday or Thursday, which would definitely be clear within 3 business days because it depends on when on Friday you applied, when they received it. So I would definitely hang on through Wednesday or Thursday because Saturday and Sunday may not count as a business day.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying that.
Of course.
We're seeing, and feel free to hop on the Q&A and see if you see anything you like, but I'm seeing, can you clarify for folks if you said if you can apply for PPP and EIDL, can a one-person LLC apply for a PPP?
I believe so, yes. If you're a sole proprietor with an LLC, you should be able to be eligible. That's correct, right, Randy?
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay. I see here PPP is 75% payroll and 25% other expenses. PPP becomes a grant if you follow the rules. If you don't, it becomes a loan. It's a no-brainer. Even if you will not use 75% on payroll, why not take it? I agree. I mean, everyone, like at the end of the day, you spend this on payroll or mortgage and rent, even if it doesn't cover all of it, it's free money. This is free money. So it's being essentially exhibited and the language is called a loan. And the reason it's called a loan is because there's conditionality to it. But so long as you spend it on payroll or on covered expenses like utilities or your rent, it's free money. Just don't spend it on inventory or anything else. And this is just kind of given to you. Let's see. This is great. Let me see.
You have time for one more.
Sure. Does rent and utility costs count when applying for PPP, or is it just the payroll average? Randy, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, could you repeat it again?
So they want to know, when you apply for the PPP, is it just your payroll average, or does rent and utility costs count in your application?
For the PPP loan and clarifying what is your payroll cost, I believe that rent is not a part of your
It's
payroll.
not a part of the application?
No, I don't think rent is something that you add up in.
So it seems like mortgage and rent may not be included, which obviously is a major issue. And it's something that we're going to try to, we can at least try to address in the next, and try to push for in the next week.
When they're adding up payroll costs, they're really looking at the employee specifically. So they want to know what you're paying them in wages, what you're paying them for benefits, vacations, PTO, but no, payroll costs, we're looking at the employee.
Okay, so it says, I'm trying to fill out the PPP form now. It asks how much you will spend for certain items such as rent, payroll, but it doesn't say what period of time. Is it for the 8 weeks of the loan or for the entire year? It is 2.5 times your rent. So it would be, that would be 10 weeks, right, Randy?
Yeah.
So it would be the 8 to 10 weeks. It would be your payroll expenses. Basically take 1 month of payroll expenses, or when it asks for certain items as rent, etc., it's 2.5. So you're going to multiply your 1 month of payroll times 2.5. So that is how much you're going to spend for certain items in the application. What if my business only has part-time employees? Will I qualify for a PPP? So this is designed, so you're going to use your entire payroll amount, but in the forgiveness part, it is aimed towards retaining full-time employees. Is that correct, Randy?
That's correct. It's the goal is to retain the amount of full-time employees that you had before.
Let's see. If you are a sole proprietor and are your only employee, as many truck owners are, if you are only giving $1,000 per employee, what does that mean? $1,000 a week? I'm trying to figure out, I apologize if I'm not interpreting your question. I'm trying to do my best in interpreting it, but I'll answer it live. So basically, if you're only giving $1K per employee, what does this mean, $1,000 a week? Basically, you're going to apply for your loan, and you're going to apply using, and again, this is for PPP. You're going to apply using your payroll expenses, even if you're the only employee. Take your payroll for 1 month and apply that times 2.5. And so let's say you're paying yourself $2,000, or it says $1,000 per employee. If you're paying yourself $1,000 per week, and then that means that your monthly expenses is $4,000, which means what you're going to put in your application is $10,000, because 4 times 2.5 is 10K. So that's what you would put in. And again, it's according to your previous payroll data.
Exactly. It's it's very specific if you are a typical small business, or if you're an independent contractor. It's also very specific depending on when you were in business. Some folks don't have a full year of record. So it's always important to check with your small business development center resources and local resources before filling out the payroll costs. Alex, we have to wrap up. So
Okay.
You can say a few minutes and then we'll boot you off. We'll stick around with all the audience, but we have to get you to your next meeting.
Thank you all so much. I so appreciate it. I'm sorry, Raina, I'm gonna squeeze in one. It says I'm on maternity leave now. It can be done in mid-April. Can I still apply for PPP? It depends on the function of your maternity leave. If you're on paid maternity leave, absolutely. If you're not on paid maternity leave, I believe you can still apply for PPP, but you may have to do it in April, but I'm sure Randy can follow up on the policy with that. As they said, they're trying to keep me on time. So I'm gonna go and head off to our next meeting, but thank you all so very much. Our team is staying on this call and moving on and continuing to answer your questions. So feel free to stay on. And this presentation is replaying in about 1 minute. So I gotta go, but I'll see you all. Thank you all so much, and best of luck to you in this difficult time.
Wow. Thank you everyone for sticking around for this.